So, hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And I believe that Jordan Peterson is just a notorious, well educated conservative. That's it. And I'll get more into that in a minute. Of course, I am Earthling, yada, yada, yada. I have a couple of degrees that I got with a scholarship a while ago. I am an ex-Army reservist. I have traveled a little bit, not as much as Jordan Peterson, definitely. I've lost a substantial amount of weight, kept it off. I've quit smoking for a number of years, and that's it for me. So, I, just like Eric Weinstein, I have to say that I probably don't particularly like Jordan Peterson. The difference, I suppose, is something that he was talking to, is it Tim Ferriss, I believe? And Tim was asking him, like, as everybody might, if you've seen anything about him, or you've seen a debate with Jordan Peterson, how he manages to keep his cool. And he said, well, the first thing, he has one up on many people, which is that he has been, is it a psychologist? Over 20,000 hours of that. So he's had to keep his cool in many, many situations. And so he has that as a backdrop. And also, he was on a television station, and one of the people who work there showed him that it does not play well to show any kind of aggression on TV. It doesn't make sense. And I think that ability to keep his emotions under check, even though, as he says in that interview with Tim Ferriss, that sometimes he's boiling inside, he still is able to do that, I guess because of practice. So it makes him come across as a little bit less off, I suppose, than Eric Weinstein, which means that I don't not like him as much. I don't dislike him as much. Eric Weinstein really doesn't have any problem showing too much aggression or disdain or condescension at times. And that, Jordan Peterson is absolutely right. But one of the things that Tim Ferriss asked him, he basically asked him, well, tell me about your life, about your origin story, as they might say in a Marvel movie. And he comes from a very conservative town in Canada. He describes it as maybe one of the last stops on the line. And he mentioned conservative a number of times with respect to his town and the people that live there. One of the things that struck me, though, is that he said, for example, that he was a part of a political party, I think. And one thing that stood out to him was that some of the people who were very successful and powerful in business and perhaps other areas, he could relate to them. Whereas the activists that he was supposedly a part of and represented, he couldn't relate to them as much, and he just found them to be resentful. So in his mind, he thought to himself, well, I have these ideas about the way that life should be. I have a book education, but what the hell do I know when these people are successful? These other people, the activists, are not, and they just seem to be resentful, and I just seem to have ideas like them, and I can relate to these successful people. And I thought to myself, I'm like, so you equate the fact that they were successful in the sphere of power and money with the fact that they are probably right in the rest of their beliefs. If there's anything that I've realized more and more in life, is that every single aspect of even a particular topic or sphere is its own particular skill. For example, with respect to learning a language, listening and understanding, that's a specific skill. Speaking is a specific skill. Reading is a specific skill. All of these different things. So, can you speak French? Well, maybe you can speak French. Maybe you can speak, conversational Spanish. French, sorry. Can you speak business French? Can you speak, I don't know, with respect to real estate? Do you know that? Do you know how to actually pronounce all the words properly? So the fact that this guy would look at some people, many of whom may have been successful through their parents, through the wealth of their parents, and for him to assess the situation as, you have, so you smart. You don't have power and influence, so you not smart, is, as people would say, and of course, if there were Neanderthals alive today, that would probably be a problem. It's very Neanderthal of him to make such a basic assessment of life. And he has, and Tim Ferriss, I hope it's Tim Ferriss, feeds him like quotes that he would give from different things. And to me, it really came down to these different quotes that he used as rules. For example, in his new book, as he said a number of times, there's a rule, or part of a rule, where he's saying that you don't pull down societal institutions in a bid to become happy, in a bid to improve yourself or better yourself. So he gave some examples of a friend of his that he knows who is atheist, who started to be against the Christmas traditions of his family, who were also atheists. And his argument was, well, if you remove all these trappings and things that associate with Christmas, well, what do you put in its place? What? If a table has 5 legs and you remove one of the legs, what do you put in its place? Why do you have to celebrate something at that specific time of year? Is it necessary? Something has to go into the place of this thing. If you don't believe in Jesus and you don't believe in God, then why would removing or being consistent, why would that need to be replaced? That doesn't, why? And this is unfortunately part of the problem, where he's just a conservative. He has, a psychology background, I think. He's written over 100 papers, published papers that Tim Ferriss would have mentioned. And the idea is this how he goes around coming up with, is this how he does science, basically? Is this his scientific method? Like, you have to put something in its place. Or for another example, he says that, a lot of people, they don't want to get married. They just don't. And maybe you shouldn't get married with the church, but maybe you should get married. Or maybe you shouldn't get married with the government, but maybe you should just get married with the church. But if you just take marriage out of the equation completely, then what do you put in its place? Again, what? What are you talking about? Because if we are being scientific, so we separated from the apes, people like to use that expression, like if it makes it any more different than, we descended directly from animals. You don't want to call them apes? Fine, because apes are a different thing that exists now. But our common ancestor probably was very ape-like, if not just an ape, if we saw it. But so you think that those people, what were they replacing marriage with? I mean, what do chimps replace marriage with? This kind of unscientific thinking at the bottom of his assessment of life is just, why does marriage need to be replaced? It doesn't make any sense. And he contradicts like many of the assessments that he uses in his work. So, for example, he might say that, well, part of the way that I see whether or not something is wrong in a relationship might be, if you go into the kitchen and in the refrigerator there's food that's spoiling, or the kitchen is dirty, or there are packages that haven't been opened in years, or since the wedding, for example, that gives you an idea that something is wrong. Something is wrong here. Why does anything need to be wrong? If one person wants it like that and the other person doesn't, then yeah, that can be a problem. That can be an issue. But if both of the people are just plain messy and they're both happy with it and it doesn't bother anybody else, why does anything need to be wrong? And then he might be like, well, he was, and I believe in Tim Ferriss' interview, well, if the house is messy and there's stuff all over the place that's messy, then that also is a problem, an indication that something's wrong. But very shortly after, or just before, he's like, well, I have a closet here that's been messy. It's been messy for years. Yeah, it would be messy for years if you've written like 100 papers. If you are writing book after book after book. If you are going on to, podcasts and talking to people all over the world, then yeah, you're probably not going to have enough time to put things in order. And I don't know what his marital status is, but is that your wife's responsibility if you are married to do that because you are never at home or something? I don't know. But I can see where all of his core assumptions seem to lie, which is that, hey, this is how I grew up, this is what I saw around me, and this is what is at the core necessary and right and true. And I can, on top of that, I can use my words, I can use my education, I can use my vocabulary, I can use my ability to remain calm in tense circumstances to push my underlying core beliefs that this is the way that everything should be, more or less, in order for it to be real and useful and just good. And the more that he spoke, the more I just met and more of these assumptions that he was just building his, I would say, his castle, his ideas on. And honestly, at the end of the day, it is really good. He's right. Aggression doesn't play well. Even though I guess to an extent it works for Eric Weinstein. But, I found out about Jordan Peterson quite a while ago. Eric Weinstein, as he would say or has said, he fraternizes with billionaires and some of the most powerful people on the planet, yada, yada, yada. But I wouldn't know him except for the fact that he was on, Joe Rogan's podcast. Really, that's it. Jordan Peterson has been controversial and noisy. He's been controversial and noisy, and I think he had a position at Harvard, for example. He's been in those circles, so that's why we're aware of him. And I think him having that conservative core, which maybe Elon Musk has as well, I don't know, enables him to have this certainty to be able to make bold statements. And that enables one to garner fame and power and attention and so on. And it's not necessarily that anything that he has to say is particularly any more enlightened than the run-of-the-mill conservative who just believes what they believe, because that's honestly the sense that I got from him. Because. But anyway, of course, that is just my opinion, and feel free to like, comment, subscribe, of course, dislike, or send comments that disagree with my point of view. the same way that you would if this were your piece. Have a good one. Peace.